Thanks as always for tuning in to the CIO Lifeline. Today we're going to have part two of this broader topic on talent management, getting the most out of employees, views on open door policy. What type of review is most effective for today's employees? Office water cooler talk, a difficult decision of when to let an employee go, and other areas around this topic. If you haven't checked out part one yet, you'll find the link to it in the description of this video. And if you're going to take the time to click the link, go ahead and click that subscribe button if you haven't yet already. Appreciate it as always. Don't go anywhere. Can you believe we're talking about the same shit for a second time? Round two, talent management. In all seriousness, this is such an important topic. In post, Craig, going through the recording and you watch the video, we quickly realized how much we didn't talk about. So here we are today.
I guess, Tony, if we didn't have to worry about people, life would be easy. So it's all about the people management, right? And that's what we're tapping on. I mean, tech is one thing, but it requires people.
When we think about the groups that we manage, because after all, we are in the people business. Because without the people around us, we really are not very successful. But in looking back at some of the things we talked about, the high stress of the day, you blink and it's already time to go. I mean, we're not 8 to 5ers, right? That part is true. I'm always reminding myself of this, is that, you have people around you. And people have feelings, they have their personal lives, they have things that are going on. I mean, if someone's grumpy that day, you got to be mindful that there's more to life than just the task before them. So I think about making time for conversation. And how do you balance that? Because obviously you don't want to waste half of your day away because we do have a job to do, right? But carving out time to have that communication, and it's got to be genuine. I mean, I feel like if you're just checking a box and, hey, how's it going? Midway through the response, you're drifting off or you're checking your phone. I think that probably has the worst effect.
That's great. Very good. And those knees, remember now, it's all in the hips. You're doing great. It's all in the hips.
It revolves around trust, right? You got to build those people around you that trust you, that are going to allow you to rise, especially if you're in the corporate world. And that's life. Sometimes you got to swing it to the personal side. And when you have one-on-ones, it's good to be tactical. But every fourth one, if you're having weeklies, check in on them personally. Check on them with their career path. Check on them with their, what's biggest on their mind. And then when it's their time to mentor, they can look at you and what you've done for them.
It's, you like to think that you as a leader and working with your group, that something becomes sticky for them in their career path with their direct reports or their next career. And so that making time for conversation, I guess another way to call it is an open door policy. Can that pendulum swing too far? Have you ever had an entire one-on-one that was just pure personal conversation?
Yeah, so the one-on-one personal, I totally believe that's healthy, and like I recommend one out of four is personal. It's like you want to know what their health is like, their personal health, their stability, and something you can have impact. And it might be something at work that's causing it, it might be something at home that's causing it, but you let them talk. And I think that's absolutely the new norm. It should be the norm. I think that's healthier for an organization. It shows care, trust, respect. The open door policy, old school, you got a minute, it's very disruptive, and of course you're going to have a minute with them, but you got to build in that respect there also, because you have a job to do, they have a job to do, and helping them think through, is it something worthwhile in interrupting workflow for, or can it wait till our next one-on-one? And just helping them process that. And sometimes it's a learning thing, right? They're like, hey, you got a minute? And it was like a low level question that could have waited. But the inefficiency of stopping and starting a project, right? Helping them understand that is another growth thing. It's a soft skill, whatever you want to call it. You do want to have a minute for the hot things. And if you have a system in place, I use Planner, right, where they can just put a parking lot idea in there and they know it's safe. List management is key for me. There's 5 things I would talk to Craig about. Boom, 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 boom. I create 3 cards. You create 3 cards on Planner. They're safe. They're safe. We're going to meet on them. Now you can go back to center and we're going to talk about them on Monday.
An element I heard in your response was reading the room. What becomes an art form and something that you should be mindful of over time is when you approach the individual, being able to sense is this the right time. Now, if it's something critical or something that truly can't wait, that's different. When I'm at the dentist, the dental hygienist, she'll sit there and ask, "Hey, how's Penny and Ginger doing?" Now, those are my dogs. Now, think about this. They have hundreds and thousands of patients, and she's asking, "How's Penny and Ginger?" And I haven't seen this individual in months. They're writing down these notes, and they'll ask purposeful questions about home life and vacations. And I'm a big golfer, so what trip did I go on? And they just jot these notes down and they reference them during the session. Do I think they're being disingenuous? Because that's one way that you could look at this. No, I mean, they see too many people, and it's a genuine conversation. I go back to that. Are they being robotic? How's Penny and Ginger? And you're talking, that's great. No, it's actual back and forth conversation. But these little notes are starters to that conversation. And I think, if you're a CEO or you're a leader and you have a lot of people underneath you in the organization, creating that visibility. So that's the other part I wanted to talk about. Knowing people's names. Just because I don't remember your name and it required a note doesn't mean I don't care. And it's having that type of conversation with the folks around you that I think helps build those relationships.
Well, even with your hygienist example, they may not remember the name of your dogs, but they may, it's just that jog to say, oh, it's a black lab, right? You can't remember everything. I mean, I know there are a few people that have the photographic memory. It's key. And, we're just talking about, helping people be better.
When I was a 20 something and I was in my first leadership role, I learned a hard lesson. And I still, just thinking about it or even talking about it right now, I still feel bad. It's been 25 years. Anyway, so I was a developer lead for where I was working, and we had an intern. And this lady was 20 years my senior at the time, and actually a little older than that. And she was asking me questions about this particular project, and it involved the purchasing department. So she would ask me these questions, and I'd be like, "Okay, let me find out." And I'd get up, walk over to purchasing, have some dialogue. I'd come back with the answer. Like the fourth time, she looked at me. She goes, "Why can't I just go over there and work with them on that?"
Oh yeah.
It was an easy light bulb, but then I'm just like, yeah, like, what the hell am I doing? You know, of course, like, I'm just in the way.
Empower them, give them the autonomy to make some decisions, know that 10% are going to be mistakes. It's going to be a coaching opportunity. And then they're growing. Then you're off to the races of growing, coach, and repeat, repeat, repeat. And I think that's the psychology around it. But it builds trust. It's like, oh, he's going to allow me to make a mistake, and we're going to talk through it, and we're going to, the goal is don't make the same mistake. Just say that up front. We know we're going to make mistakes, and just have that kind of relationship. Boy, and I've seen people's wings just spread when they have that autonomy and freedom to fail a little bit, right?
I mean, we don't genuinely want someone to fail, but you need a bit of that. It helps build that empathy and learnings, and you just come out stronger for it. But I like how you phrase it. They need to fail a little bit, right? Because we don't want a catastrophe if we see it coming. But creating those teachable moments, it's a fine needle to thread. Love it. Let me circle back just to close the loop on our first section with the open door policy and being open to feedback. Because is there a fine line between friendship in the workplace and that subordinate, boss subordinate role, or is this too old school of thinking?
Both, right? It depends on the person's maturity. Everybody knows where the line is, right? And when you start crossing, if you go out drinking and all that stuff, even if you're having fun, there's a line there. Breaking bread together and drinking together builds nice connection, and you learn, things about people. But there's also, if they drink a little too much, say something off color, whatever, next day, pull them off, say, hey, love having the social, but you want to watch these comments because this can hurt you in the future. If there's other issues, drinking too much or whatever, that's a different conversation. But you got to drive into that storm, have the hard conversation as quick as possible.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
It jumped up a notch.
It did, didn't it?
You have that social hour, and did they perhaps have a little bit too much? Did they cross this line that you're keeping an eye on? And then, like you said, the next day, in fact, before I would even dive into it, I reflect on it with them. Hey, great time. Thanks for coming out. At first, I'm waiting for them to go, yeah, and I apologize about blah, blah, blah. Like, are they self-aware initially, or do they look at it as this was awesome and there was no line crossed, So, but to your point, then then it becomes that conversation. But I'm always looking for that self-awareness first.
Yeah, self-awareness is huge, and what you brought up a good point, the humility, right? Do they apologize? That's what I look for. I was young too. I made mistakes. I had to apologize to my bosses, right? I'm like, I did drink too much at a social, apologize, learn, adjust. That's life, man. You got to fail forward, but keep getting better. If they can't apologize, that's a red flag for me, or at least a yellow flag. That's that one-on-one personal soft skill coaching that we got to be soft skill coachers now.
There's also the reality of perceptions. I've had a prior boss tell me what's equally important to the task at hand and what you're doing for the business is in that it's managing your perceptions. Depending on the personality, and I'll make a broad statement here, but the higher up the food chain, the more entrenched and the more perceptions are reality. Being mindful of this, I think, is key, and helping to coach those individuals through those times. I think that's important as well.
I think if you do it around truth and respect, right? I mean, you don't want to be fake perception either. I don't want to be the smoothie perception telling people what they want to hear if it's not in my heart. I think it's the three, right? Respect, truth, and perception of how those people need to hear things, because some people need to hear things differently. You and I could have a conversation, but if we're talking to a big dog or whatever that just needs bullet points, we're going to change our tone and we're going to talk like they need to be talked to.
In a prior career, it was a family-owned business. So you had the dad, he was top dog, and then you had the two sons. I could have the same conversation about a very simple topic, and it would be three different conversations. The dad was very structured, very formal, very to the point. One of the sons, a little more lighthearted. The third son, happy hour, man. Knowing your audience, very important.
People are going to have bad days, right? Even like people that work for me for like 10, 20, 10 years, whatever, they even had like a bad week, starting to have kids, all that stuff. They can earn bad days or bad weeks. And you just got to not be so, again, this response versus reaction. Look at beyond what's happening. Is something going on in the personal life, something going on in business that's stressing them out? Where is it? Am I going to take it personal right away? Or somebody having a bad moment, bad day, bad week? Is it going to bother me tomorrow? If it's going to bother me tomorrow, then I probably should address it.
Great advice. Just don't react in the moment. That's a human nature piece. That's easier said than done. Can you absorb it in the moment? And I like that other part advice is how will I feel tomorrow? Now I would interpret that, at least for me, as it's tomorrow. Do I still feel the same way? Right. And we have some tough personalities. Everybody has tough personalities where you work. I like that diffuse point in time. Like you said, they just be having a bad day. I tend to address these things through humor, and sometimes I'll come up and whatever was stressing out this individual the day before, I kind of double down on it in a humorous way the next day. And it's always tends to be a nice icebreaker, but it works for that person. Everybody's different. And so when I think about like perceptions, like we've run IT organizations, Craig, and a lot of times it can be a thankless job. If someone's computer is broke, they could care less about the why and the what. They just need it fixed now. And it's sometimes there's a lot of break the glass moments. And so how you deal with those situations, following up with them, because the last thing you want as a department, as an individual, is that you're a poor service, just they're known for poor service. They don't get back to you right away. And just think about that, because poison spreads a lot faster than goodwill. And if it's always top of mind, it may help guide behavior and how you manage yourself and your department.
So every week, I used to do it like religiously every week. What didn't go, what went well, right? But what didn't go well, and how can I improve next week?
I love the group meetings and just kind of having a roundtable. How was your week? What went well? What didn't go so well? And the what didn't go so well, it's not a bitch session. It's meant to understand the challenges and how did you address it? And you kind of coach each other. And even in my team helps coach me. It's great because you hear about these things in the trenches that you're not privy to. Another old school comment, but maybe there's a new school way. And I want to get your thoughts on this. Talked about the open door policy of your weekly meets, but then there still tends to be a formality around end of year or quarterly. So quarterly reviews, annual reviews. Are they 1 or are they a 5 when it comes to leadership? I mean, and I'm poking fun at this, but what is your approach to that formal review process? Or is there an argument, today's day and age just doesn't have to be such?
Yeah, I adopted the EOS quarterly conversation. It's not a review; it's just a conversation. It has these 5 components that you can download the template. It's real easy, but it's more of a conversation. What's going good? What's not going good? What's confusing? What's missing? I call it 4 helpful lists. I actually adopted that from when I got Life Plan certified, but then I worked it into the EOS. But it's just a conversation because I don't want it to be a review quarterly because I want to have weekly conversations of improvement. And I used to hate annual reviews and you get all these dings. I'm like, why didn't you tell me that like in January? I had 11 months to fix it.
Amen.
Weekly one-on-ones will uncover things, especially if you're doing a personal one every fourth one. Quarterly conversations, they're not a big deal because you're meeting with them weekly. It's just hey, let's do a reflective of the quarter. And then the annual reviews, I usually let them do a self-review and then I push in my thoughts because I want self-reflection first, not what I think. And then I can interject my thoughts into theirs.
I've kind of 180'd my thought on this, maybe not a full 180, on the self assessment. My first reaction to, you have a formal 3-page review with scoring and it's handed to the employee. Do your own review. No, it's all in the words and right. But when you say it's self reflection and what their view of their performance is as a starter, and then you push in, yeah, I do. I like that. But I still hear, can you believe my boss is having me fill out my own review? I mean, what the f? Like, they're not taking it seriously. What am I gaining out of it? But to your point, and I believe it, is that no, I'm not getting out of doing a formal review. I just want to be able to understand how you think you're doing, and we kind of work on this together. It's not going to be a 5-minute, yep, check, bye. I mean, it's going to be an engaging conversation, and that's as a starting point, or at least I think that's what you're saying. Am I right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially if you're not giving them forms where they got to check boxes. I mean, you probably should have some check boxes on there. And the other thing, if there are like a scale, I always use 1 to 4. I hate 5 because I hate people selecting 3. You're either tilting good or you're tilting bad. I always
Ah,
use one to
great tip.
four. Yes.
I like it. That's genius.
Yeah, I hate the middle ground. You're either on the that way or that way. It gives you insight to where you are, where they're at. Then you can coach them because if they're starting out with your thoughts, they're not their thoughts and they're not truly where they're at.
That's why the most senior guy in the room or gal should not speak first. This has burned projects. This has burned meetings in the past because there's sheep in the room. It derails itself. Now, the topic may not warrant who should speak first, but if it's a key decision point or key process, the senior person in the room should speak last. Social gatherings. So we're back to the soft side of talent management, and you're out with your team, you're out with your group, and it's to celebrate or it's just to have some drinks and unwind. I'm a big fan of make sure you're the first to leave because they need to talk about you. And you want to be able to create that environment for that type of dialogue.
I was never intentional about that. So that's something I'm learning from you, Tony. I, it would happen. I was more of the, hey, we're closing out at 7. So there's either a last group of people that either want to have some one-on-one with me and people straggle out, and they just want to ask,
There's that.
they ask me some questions and stuff in a casual format, which was the norm. I'm big with the spouses, especially say you got a group of 5 people or whatever, and say bring your spouses or whatever. It's kind of like a character indicator. If they're going to act way different when their spouse is around, then it's like, I made these mistakes, right? So I'm speaking from mistake making, right? But it's but you want to be the same person at work than you are at home. If you have to be one person at work and one person at home, that'll eventually catch up to you.
We're not 8 to 5, and there's always going to be a list of 10. I mean, you never have a clean list in IT. It's never like, geez, what the hell am I going to do today? I mean, I can't remember the last time I said that, especially with today's lean mentality and just wringing that washcloth as much as you can. Hey, great year, record year. What are you going to do for me next year? It's just the world we live in. But I'm a big fan of making sure that they take their PTO. And I'm not a fan of hoarding it to the end of the year because I feel like you need decompression time during the year. And then making sure they take their a lunch, a break. They have to be able to get away. And it's not, a common thing I hear is, well, I'm just going to come back from lunch and I'm going to have 10 more things. It's not worth it. These are coachable moments and you really have to work on stress management, workload management, because you need that downtime.
If they're not doing it, then something else is wrong, and you should probably push into that on the one-on-one and just say, hey, you got to keep the balance so you don't burn out. They got to have that social, otherwise they'll eventually get out of balance. And again, that's going to lead up to all these mental crises that we're dealing with right now, that you need a break and you will be more productive.
Companies' approach to time off. I'm not a fan of, well, you have 5 personal days and you have 10 sick days, and
Friday is Hawaiian shirt day. So, if you want to, go ahead and wear a Hawaiian shirt and jeans.
To me, it's like you just have days. Or real new school is like you have whatever days you need. Now, 2 abusers shouldn't dictate the policy. It's all about managing your team. But to me, I'm not hung up on, was this a sick day or was this a personal day? To me, it's like, hey, I'm going to be taking a trip going to Niagara Falls for 3 days. And do I have enough notice? How's your project workload? It has to be managed right, of course.
Most policies are created for the abusers, and that you got to address the abusers, not create all these stinking policies. You just make sure your projects get done and be respectful. The schedule, the time, the holidays. It's the maturity factor, and then they're coached.
I always want to give my employees a career path. Now, there are some that, look, they're happy in their lane and they're going to stay in that lane, but that's dialogue you have. In theory, everybody should have a career path and a progression path. That's not for everybody, and that's okay. If you have all type A's, good luck managing that. There's a balance, and you have to figure out what that balance is. All right, so let me rewind back or pivot to another example. When do you know it's time to let that person go? I mean, it's always a tough call. It's always a tough conversation. Can be a perception that you just hang on to people too long. Now, different situations may warrant a different approach. If you're single threaded with this person and you're only getting 40% output, is 40% better than 0? You have no one to pick up the slack. So now you're going to 0. Do you anonymously recruit to have someone in the wings? I mean, all these things come into play. Like if you have a commercial team of 50 people and you have a poor performer, cutting them in the moment, it's much easier. You have 49 other people to pick up the slack.
After they're gone, everybody steps up. They figure out how to make it work. Once and you should know if you're doing the weeklies, you should know if you're doing the quarterlies, then you just got to say, hey, doesn't seem like this is a fit. trying to be respectful. Sooner you can get to that and say, okay, it's going to leave a hole. But the danger and the bad is all the other people seeing that kind of performance and behavior is way worse than leaving a hole, in my opinion.
If it's a technical role that they're just not getting, they're not being poisonous. It's not, this person's really trying and they're not getting it. The open question is, well, how coachable is this person? How much time do I give them? Or you just cut? You generally want to coach someone, but at some point you might realize they're not coachable.
Mhm.
And if there's not another place for them, it's unfortunate.
What might be cool and might be hard, Tony, is having a roundtable peer review of what's working, what's not working. And either if you're going to be the real vulnerable people that are going to allow each other to help each other be better or address real issues. It'd be delicate, but boy, I think there's some power in that.
This is where I think the senior person should talk first. I would start off with my shortcomings or how I messed up.
Yep.
And, I think it humanizes this.
Yep.
And oh my God, if you're doing it, okay, then
Yeah.
I think it becomes a more open conversation.
Be vulnerable first. And that sets the
Be
tone.
vulnerable first.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah.
Hey, and not only be vulnerable first, I would say also on the opposite end of the spectrum, don't spotlight yourself when there's a job well done. I just reflexively go, hey, hey, great work on that project. Hey, that's Ruby. I mean, she kicked ass.
Always, man. That's good. Yeah. Because you want to keep that humility side of things. So that's awesome.
I have 2 sons. And when they were of the age that I felt they could handle it, because I was a 13-year-old, a 12-year-old, right? I have on my I have a workbench and a whole workshop set up in my basement, and they were young, and I took them down. I said, "I'm gonna give you your first life lesson. This is your first career lesson." And I lifted up the lid, and there's this big bumper sticker, and it says, "Don't be a dick." And they were just like, "Ooh, ooh," And I said, no, you're old enough to understand this, and I pontificated a little bit about it, but it was just all about humility
Yep.
and being respectful. Craig, thanks again. Great conversation. This topic, I feel like we could have 4 more parts, and we just might. But just to think about future episodes, we want to focus on the visionary aspects of IT, C-suite representation, the importance of IT steercos, the working genius assessment and how that helps interpret who you are as a leader and your team, and many other topics. Until next time.
Thanks, Tony. See ya.
Yeah, my dentist, every time I go to the dentist, the who's ever, I don't know, God damn it, who are the ones that clean your teeth?
Hygienists.
Yeah. Okay. So, okay. So you mentioned your anniversary next Tuesday, and I saw your eyes drift. Were you looking at a calendar?
Yeah. I knew it was next Tuesday, but it's right there.
Just checking.
Yeah. It wasn't
My
a
wife
eye
she
roll.
tests me all the time on
It
that.
wasn't an eye roll. It was like that. Yep. Tuesday. Thanks for that clarification. Remember that respect thing?
Yeah, we're on the record.
Yes. Oh, that's funny.
Pertain to this topic, and it's just here we are again, and we're gonna continue. Yeah.